Cronan Saga.
Alex was in there, and there wasn't much time. Too many people. Fake tits, masks, and bodyguards. Freddy pushed through the crowd, upsetting a tray of drinks and sending them crashing to the ground.
Hey, you're gonna pay!
A hand clutched at his suit jacket, but Freddy had already shot the gap in between a pair of inebriated businessmen. He was getting close to the booth, but there wasn't much time.
Stop the fight! Stop the fight!
He called sweatily as he wriggled his way through a soup of debauchery. Panting, he collided with the organizer's bar behind the cage.
Just wait! He's just a kid, but...
He frantically fumbled with something in his pocket. The organizer, a thin man with weathered features, raised his eyebrows.
Do we have a problem?
The organizer asked. Freddy's hand caught on something, and he cursed as he flapped, trying to remove it from his pocket. God damn it! Finally, tearing a weak seam in the jacket, he ripped it out. A huge roll of cash. All of it on the kid. Freddy managed, sweat trickling from his scalp into his comb-over.
Just in time.
The organizer said, grinning as he scooped up the cash. He adjusted the pocket square in his loud suit, then rang the bell.
Bets are closed! Bets are closed!
He shouted, signaling. The green lights flickered above the blood-soaked pit. Alex looked up. The rusty bars loomed above him, glistening with sweat, blood, and desperation. His breathing quickened. Tupalak had resumed his pre-fight rituals, stomping on the ground with his mucklucks, clapping his hands, and moving them along his skin. Alex watched him from across the cage. The warrior's eyes were cold, his chest heaving as he inhaled deeply through flared nostrils. His skin was smooth and strong, and his body smeared with drying blood. The crowd was getting restless, pelting them with a cacophony of insults and exhortations to violence. Their twisted expressions were distorted by the smooth jazz that pervaded every inch of the Green Dolphin. Close the cage doors! Bets are closed, and the fight is on! Called the announcer. The bell rang, and the place went wild. Tupalak regarded him disdainfully as he took in the boy's stature and appearance. His expression curdled into pure disgust. He started slowly, pacing back and forth like a panther, muttering.
How could I, Tupalak, bear the disgrace of this weak blood, child's blood?
Tupalak suddenly stopped pacing.
You insult me!
He turned and grabbed the metal cage angrily. He flexed his forearms and began to scream, smashing his forehead into the iron bars. Blood rushed down, pouring over his features.
I cook myself rather than be shamed.
Alex flicked the volume knob of his black Walkman. The sluices opened, and a sudden, thick rush of lubricated smooth jazz oiled in through his ear canals, penetrating the blood-brain membrane and saturated his mind. The jazz before was smooth, but this was overwhelming. It stroked his brain, tickling the recesses as it dripped down the ridges. This was hot, pink, milky jazz, sweat jazz, sliding over itself, hot notes trapped in an egg yolk being passed between his ears, a wet ball of sex being played with, improvised on, and squeezed out before popping and finally dribbling from his mouth. Now this was smooth. Alex opened his eyes.
I'm gonna tear that skin off
He said, muscles bulging and steaming.
and wear it.
Go home, boy,
Tupelak turned to the organizers.
and bring me a real fight.
Alex could feel the jazz now, slithering down his spinal cord, coiling around his bones, and filling his muscles. So good.
My name is Alex!
With
You are only boy.
the audience cheered as Alex charged. His body was tense, his fists clenched, his eyes ablaze with excitement and determination, and his mind filled only with thoughts of violence and vivisection.
Give me your skin!
Before Tupelak even entered a combat stance, Alex was on him. He loosed a jazz-fueled left hook into Tupelak's stomach. It thudded home, but the big man didn't move. Alex followed it up with an uppercut to his groin, like hitting stones, and a right hook to his liver, and another. The blows barely had any effect. His skin was too thick and too jazzy. Tupelak countered with a shovel punch that Alex sidestepped just in time. He felt the rush of wind just beside his face as he narrowly avoided the devastating strike. Sensing an opening, Alex lashed out with a quick jab to the ribs, but the champion barely registered the blow. Tupelak's massive build belied his speed. He swung his thick arm in a wide arc, and this time, Alex wasn't fast enough. The blow connected with Alex's side, sending him flying into the cage wall. The steel rung low with the force of the impact. Alex gasped for breath as the impact reverberated through his body. The crowd roared, showering them with curses and beer. Blood trickled from his ear as he unsteadily pulled himself to his feet, but his eyes locked on Tupelak with renewed focus. This would be the only thing it could be. The very thing that the smooth jazz kept singing to him. A primal struggle. A brutal test in which nothing could be held back. No quarter. A battle without honor. Alex dug his sneaker into the ground. He snarled as he charged forward with the force of a cannonball, avoiding Tupelak's deadly attacks with a slide and a roll. Inside the big man's guard, Alex then used his momentum, planting a foot on the floor to spring upwards, turning himself into a missile, headbutting Tupelak from below his jaw with a massive thudding impact. Tupelak staggered back. A piece of his tongue, bitten off from the strike, fell to the ground. Alex screamed a war cry then, a little ball of venom and fury.
Ah!
Tupelak grinned, his blood-slicked lips curling back to reveal sharpened teeth. Alex rushed forward, a flurry of quick strikes aimed at Tupelak's face and neck, desperate in character, animalistic in ferocity. Right to the jaw, left to the ear, claw to the eye, talon to the throat. Fingers tore flesh, gouged, and found weaknesses where they could, leaving Tupelak's face a mask of blood. Tupelak staggered back from the lacerations, half blinded. He threw a left where the boy should have been, but his fist found only air. A right that would have felled a moose, also arced into empty space, further fatiguing him. Each attack sapped his strength. Each miss invited an animalistic counter that sent fresh slashes of pain across his brain. He stumbled. A pack of wolves nipping at a caribou, the proud beast brought low by scores of bloody wounds. The crowd thundered in wild approval. Breathing heavily and blinking blood from his eyes, Tupilak felt his heavy muscles slowing, his body weakening, and his essence draining. But not his will to fight. With a guttural roar, he lunged for the boy's body, no longer even trying to strike. Though Alex was but a blur in his vision, his outstretched hands found him. He bellowed triumphantly and slammed Alex into the ground, driving the air from his lungs and cracking his ribs. Alex screamed and tore at the brute. But Tupilak lifted him by the throat with terrifying ease, the boy's legs thrashing the air. He squeezed, and Alex's eyes bulged red as he choked. Tupilak used his left, still holding the boy, and brought him down onto an unavoidable uppercut from his right, smashing with full force into Alex's gut, rupturing his organs and tickling his spine. Alex's face contorted in a silent scream as he doubled over, immobilized with pain. Tupilak pushed his advantage. Right, left, right, left. He pummeled him, leaving Alex's face a torn, swollen mask of oozing red. Tupilak stomped on Alex's legs then, shattering them in an instant. In Alex's mind, the world went white as pain drove away even the jazz. He was left then simply feeling his broken body, frayed nerves firing streaks of fire. When his vision returned, he saw Tupilak standing over him, now almost gloating as he reached for him. Through the crushing waves of pain, Alex sensed an opportunity. His fingers tensed with the remaining jazz strength, reinforced by feral survival instinct. Just as Tupilak grabbed him again, Alex clawed into his extended arm, ripping his honored skin away from the flesh, slicing arteries and sinew alike.
Billy! I have a mission! I have a name!
Alex shouted as he clung to Tupilak's bicep, sinking his teeth into the thick hide and twisting violently back and forth, nose snarled, a red mad dog trying to kill. Tupilak screamed as his flesh was rent. But he lifted Alex all the same. This boy was tearing apart his skin. His meat was being peeled apart. Blood gushing, he could see the bone. He locked eyes with the beast for an instant. A vision of primal ferocity. A piercing eagle, beak bloody, talons menacingly curved, ripping madly at his flesh in mortal struggle. An instant before he slammed him into the cage wall. Blood splattered as Alex's forehead cracked against the iron bars, but the beast still gouged. The cage rang again and again with each impact. Skull against iron, iron against skull. Tupilak slammed until the beast let go. Until its bones broke and its skull shattered. Until it was a lifeless rag hanging from his clenched fist. Only then did he let it fall. The crowd screamed in delight as Alex lay dead in a pool of blood, his body broken. Tupilak stood over his fallen opponent, his chest rising and falling with deep animalistic breaths. He knelt and jerked loose a tooth from the beast, a final test of death. and a keepsake. He cupped his hands to collect the fresh blood from Alex's wounds. He slowly stood and ceremoniously wiped it across his body, chest, and face. The blood of Alex honors me. Cronan cursed. They had noticed him. The trio of jazz freaks began to play a smooth, syncopated rhythm that somehow dirtied the already oily air. He gasped.
So thick, so jazzy.
Cronan did not hesitate. He charged at the freaks, his fists ready to strike. He was fast. He knew he could close the distance to surprise them. He lunged forward, his body a blur of savage motion, and he launched himself at the tall man first. The freak's brass horn gleamed in the dim light as he twisted, avoiding the attacks, contorting in the music's syncopated rhythm. Cronan growled. He couldn't land a blow. He found himself disoriented by the thickening jazz. Horn notes swirled around him, leaving acrid, greasy trails in the air that wrapped themselves across his face and eyes.
Damn you, jazz freak!
He called as he swung wildly, but hit nothing. The strength of the ambient jazz, amplified by the trio's playing, affected his vision, dimming it and filling his eyes with strange, illusory shapes. He spun around, searching for his enemy, wary of every direction. His eye caught a faint glimmer in the dark. The pale woman, her dual golden saxophones glistening with poison like fangs, glided in the blackness, her fingers moving impossibly fast across the keys. Cronan leapt after her, but she again dissolved into the darkness. He screamed as lashes of the woman's saxophones shot out from the jazz haze, unseen, leaving blistering, oozing burns across his chest. He twisted, looking for his attacker, as more blurring notes wrapped around him, constricting his thoughts and pressing against the backs of his eyes and the inner walls of his ears. He turned around again, swinging violently, confused and horrified. He realized then, charging in had put him at a grave disadvantage. He was blind and surrounded. Cronan blinked at the dark, oily mist, while the music grew in intensity and virtuosity. A piercing blast of clarinet suddenly shot out from the dark, fracturing his ribs, sending him smashing into a steam pipe, rupturing it. He grunted as the steam whistled out, burning his face and shoulder, and adding a terrible high note to the ensemble. Cronan scrambled to his feet in the oil-slick black, bleeding, burned, and blind. The tall horn player hissed a serpentine giggle. A mistake. Cronan located the sound in the void. Flexing his massive legs, he leapt forward towards the snicker. He unslung Rift Blade and, in the same motion, made a fast vertical cut, cleaving the jazz freak in two. His juicy sides fell wet on the ground. The horn line was gone. Cronan listened again. The room revealed itself in sound. He heard the dying whistle of the steam pipe, the sound of his boots smacking wet in fresh blood, and the infernal jazz duet swirling around him. They were more cautious now, hiding themselves in the music. They knew his power. Cronan slowly turned, tensing at every sound, unsure of his enemy's location. He pivoted again, tightening his grip on his weapon, his breath shallow and quick. Then it came, a sharp, piercing cry from the clarinet. He felt the solo penetrate him in the back, just below his kidney, tethering him to the jazz. Cronan staggered forward, grasping his torso. Incredible pain. And then the squat jazz freak really began to blow. As he breathed into his bone-white clarinet, Cronan, horrified, felt the jazz enter him. Jazz inside. It entered his intestines and coagulated black and pestilent, corrupting the flesh. The freak's chest expanded grotesquely, veins bulging from his neck as his instrument exhaled a low note that fueled changes in Cronan's body. Cronan crumpled to the ground, spewing blood.
Where are they, Billy?
Cronan desperately heaved. The freak's mouth opened in a horrible gasp. And then sent more jazz rushing into Cronan. He could feel it growing, hot and pulsing against his innards. It malevolently chugged its way up his torso, spawning 10,000 blisters, polyps, and tumors, before bursting them all at once in cycles of tumefaction and putrefaction. Cronan writhed in agony as his body was polluted, coughing bile.
The guitar!
Called Billy Bird from the darkness.
It'll help with the jazz! Play the soul string!
His voice changed strangely on the last word. Cronan rolled over and felt for Riftblade. Still only one string. But it would have to do. He blindly groped for the pick. The jazz freak let another breath of clarinet into Cronan. He could feel the jazz gestating inside him, growing more powerful. It wanted to come out. He could feel its thoughts now as it consumed him from within, hollowing out his strong body with putrescences, warts, and abscesses. He felt incredible pressure as it perforated his muscles and started to come out through his skin, forcing itself through his pores, violating every tiny orifice. It climbed his neck and mixed with his saliva, filling his mouth with the abominable taste of jazz. Cronan couldn't breathe. He tried to grasp the pick, but it slipped through his oily fingers. He tried to pick it up, but was horrified to discover his hand, enervated by jazz, could barely move. He strummed the guitar with his greasy fingers, but the note came out muted and barely audible. He didn't have much time. He was growing weak. With every breath of the clarinet, his body was further corrupted into jazz filth. He could feel the cancer overtaking him. His organs, his cells, his soul were barely holding back the turgid reservoir of pestilence. Cronan held his oily fingers up in front of his face. With a growl of desperation, he raised his hand to his mouth and bit down hard, his teeth sinking into his flesh, tearing through his skin and rotten muscle until he felt the hardness of his bone. Holding his jaw firm, he ripped his hand away, exposing the raw bone of his fingers. The pain was excruciating, but it sharpened his mind. Cronan screamed, fingertips still between his teeth, and thrashed Riftblade's demon string hard and loud with bone. The clarion note cut instantly through the miasma of jazz. Raw and mangled, he began to shred. The string hummed beneath his touch, resonating with the raw energy of his blood. It was primal, powerful, alive. The jazz freaks cowered from the sound, their twisted bodies recoiling as the guitar's fierce melody overpowered their jazz. Though his body had rotted, Cronan wheeled himself back to his feet, alternately swinging and playing Riftblade, the music flowing through him like a storm. He cleaved the guitar into the clarinet freak's head. The sound of the string reverberating through the skull, amplifying the power. The freak sagged to the ground, pieces of brain scattered on the floor. The woman with the saxophone shrieked, her melody turning sharp and discordant. She charged, but Cronan was ready. He struck another note, low and clear, the blood on his fingers mixing with the soul string. The sound slashed through the woman's chest, cutting her in two, her pallid skin red and her black eyes blank. Cronan stood amidst the carnage, his breath ragged, his body trembling from the exertion. Blood dripped from his mangled hand. The guitar was still warm beneath his grip, its soul string humming with its feast of blood. But that was not the only sound. Between his ragged breaths, Cronan listened. He could still hear moans undulating, almost rhythmically. The jazz freaks were dead, their bodies broken and dismembered. The sound came from up ahead.
It's just in here,
Called Billy Bird.
what I was looking for.
He flew ahead into the darkness. Cronan shuffled forward. The corridor led to a large room filled with machinery and tubes, at the center of which was a table and a figure, the source of the moans. Cronan approached cautiously, Riftblade ready, though he struggled to hold himself up. Huge gears and wheels turned. Bellows huffed rhythmically. A large gramophone horn was suspended above the pale figure who was strapped to the table. A tangle of entrail-like tubing hung from the ceiling, connecting the man to the machinery, the hoses shaking as chunks of matter were sucked along them in a horrible, jittering dance. One tube ran from the man's mouth to the horn. His frame was large, but he looked emaciated. His muscles had atrophied, and his sickly white skin clung to his bones. The machine whirred with a grotesque enthusiasm, its mechanisms churning as it siphoned the life from him. His eerie moans grew louder, and the room's pale green glow pulsed in time with the machine's rhythm. Cronan was shocked. He knew that voice, though never had he heard it mew so pitifully. He hobbled his way to the apparatus. Menglock! Menglock! What has happened to you? Menglock's eyes were cloudy, but Cronan thought he still saw the flicker of life in them. I will free you from this device,
Who is Maglock?
asked Billy Bird. Why, my stalwart drummer, of course, Cronan said, tears forming in his eyes. He who blows armies away, he added, almost whispering to the emaciated body. I am here, Maglock. And so you are, Cronan. Cronan whirled around to see the source of the voice. A thin, bald, well-dressed man stepped forward, his gray suit, golden cufflinks, and spats all perfect. So you found my instrument, a well-oiled trombone. I play him nightly. The bellows sucked more air, and the tubes again shuddered. Maglock arched his back, his sunken cheeks deepening. His stretched lips parted to let loose another thin, haunting moan. Your friend has a beautiful voice. Vile scum, hissed Cronan. The man took a long drag from a cigarette, which he had placed in an ash holder. That's not very nice. Insulting your host. It is. He raised his hands, spreading them. Auditorium. You know, you could make it up to me for your breach of etiquette. He smiled mischievously. A performance. Here, I am the jazz maker. But you may call me Sanolim, Grand Alchemist of Sin. He made a little bow, then moved parallel to Cronan, admiring his evil machinery. It wouldn't be accurate to say he walked. Rather, he slithered. His movement revealed an inhuman protrusion that revoltingly extended behind his body. Though from the front he had a human shape, as he turned and moved across the room, Cronan could now see his form for what it truly was, elongated and worm-like. His tail was wrapped in a semi-transparent membrane that undulated as he moved, holding within it shadowy forms that pressed against its walls. The shadows twisted and coagulated into the suggestion of arms, torsos, and faces, all momentarily visible before receding deeper into the membrane sac. The jazzmaker oozed his way around the machinery with an unsettling grace, running his fingers along levers and gliding them over the tubing sensually. He paused, tapping a gauge with deliberate precision, his expression a twisted blend of scrutiny and admiration. Now, he turned back to Cronan, his membrane sac beginning to seep. I think it's time for a little duet.